Hi guys, welcome back aboard good old Athena. This week we have a few maintenance items on the to-do list as well as a few improvements, but most importantly I want to head out for a test sail and test our downwind setup. And we also have this rather old light wind sail that we have never used. I would like to see if this is still usable before our upcoming Atlantic crossing. My name is Mess, this is my wife Ava. I've spent the last 5 years on a somewhat extensive refit of our 1987 Warrior 38 named Athena. That was a DIY fun-packed adventure complete with a very extensive osmosis treatment, building a new rudder using vacuum infusion, rebuilding the entire deck, gutting and subsequently rebuilding most of the interior, painting the topsides, and a ton of other projects. The summer of 2021 we started cruising full time. Now we're finally ready to begin our adventure. Our downwind setup is going to be 2 poled out head sails. That is a little bit old-fashioned, but it should also be very easy to manage for a short-handed crew. This is not true for all furlers, but our furlegs here should allow us to put 2 head sails on the same furler. For that setup to work well and for it to be as user-friendly as possible, ideally the 2 sails should be identical. Precision Sail sponsored new sails for Athena last winter, so we had them make 2 100% identical head sails. Now we haven't had a chance to do any real downwind sailing yet, so this will be our first time bending on the second head sail. We'll be using the same halyard for both sails, so to get the new sail up, we first need to take the first sail down. These are heavy sails designed for offshore sailing, and they're still very much as new, so they are a little bit stiff and hard to wrangle. While Eva was cranking away on the halyard, getting a good workout in, I guided the 2 sails up the furler. There's not a lot to bending on the 2 sails at the same time, but it is a little bit time consuming, so I think a setup like this only really makes sense if you're going to be going downwind for multiple days. Both of the head sails are now on the furlegs, and we're using the same shackles for both sails, and that's one of the reasons why it's nice that the sails are identical. Now we can go ahead and furl both of the sails onto the furler. Getting the 2 head sails furled took a little bit more force than with just 1 sail. Normally I can furl the head sail by just pulling the furling line by hand, but with the 2 sails up I did need a little bit of help from a winch. One of the big upsides to a downwind setup like this is that it is super easy to reduce sail area, and it can all be done right from within the cockpit. It's just a matter of loosening the sheets and furling both sails at the same time, just as you've seen. If we were going wing on wing by using our mainsail and a single head sail, to reduce sail area we would have to do each of the sails separately. Another cool thing about the dual head sail setup is that it leaves us free to use the main as a stabilizing sail, meaning we can center the boom and pull the mainsail nice and tight, and that should help reduce rolling a little bit. You may have noticed in the very beginning of the video that I had one of our whisker poles deployed. That's because I was measuring to see if I could get our 2 poles to be roughly the same length. This is a telescoping pole. It goes out to a length of about 6 meters in increments of a little over half a meter. This is our other pole. He's a 4 meter fixed length pole. From what I've read, a whisker pole should be ideally the same length as the foot of the sail, which in our case is 6 meters, meaning this telescoping pole is basically perfect. For poling out 2 head sails, I think it makes a lot of sense to have the 2 poles be identical or very close to each other in length. Ours are not, so I've ordered a brand spanking new Selden telescoping pole that should get here in a couple of days, and once we have that we can head out for a little test sail.
I've been working on my own little project today. When we got here we noticed that there is a tradition of painting your boat's name on the wall, and we know that that's a pretty big tradition in Horta and Azores, and we've been really excited to get there one day to do it. But that's why we were really excited when we got here and noticed that it's also a tradition. So I have been working on that. I am not a painter, so in true sail life fashion, I made a stencil out of this foam material, but I thought that would be nice so then we could keep this just in case we have to graffiti our logo on any other walls in the future. But yeah, I just printed out the logo and then cut it out in this foam. I picked up this paint and paintbrushes at the hardware store, and then I have some chalk. We already had these from our sewing kit to do some stenciling, and that's pretty much all we need. We're ready to go. I actually actually went out earlier and scrubbed the area of the wall down with some soap and water per Matt's recommendation. So now I'm gonna do the first phase, which is painting the red square, and I'll probably have to wait overnight to let that dry, and then I can paint the rest. And here is our beautiful spot on the wall next to the steps. It's pretty much the only empty space. Okay, first coat is done. I think I'm gonna let that dry and then come do a second coat just so I can get that nice and bright Sail Life red. It's the next day. Last night I got another coat on the red, so I'm gonna go check it out, make sure it's dry, and see how it's looking. I wanted to get out here early while it was high tide so I can actually reach the square. Ooh, it is looking so good. It is so red. It's actually really bright compared to all the other ones. But now is for the terrifying part, which is stenciling on the letters, and this is where it can all go wrong. Alright, she's looking good so far, better than I thought it was gonna be. So now I just have to do the little sailboat. Ah, it's looking so good. I love it so far. This part right here, I'm gonna freehand, so wish me luck. It's looking very good and very bright so far, but I think I'm still gonna do a second coat on all the white, and then I will come back and show you guys the finished results. I got the second coat on the logo. It's looking pretty good, if I do say so myself, but I'm just gonna grab Mads and we can show you the final results.
Quality control time.
I may have out Mads on this project.
We'll see about that.
We will see.
Before anybody accuses us of graffiti and wrecking the marina, these are all the other boats that have done the same thing. Including this boat, which just, I guess they just put a plate up.
I love the tile idea. I think that's what we should do. I bet that thing is gonna be up here long after all these paintings. You ready?
I am.
Ta-da!
Wow, that looks pretty dang spiffy. I think Ava did a way better job than I could have done. I think that looks really, really good. We don't have a task up here on the board for doing graffiti in the marina, so we can't close that. But the test downwind setup is in progress. And next up, I think we should start on the polishing of all our stainless. Our stainless is in no way in bad shape. There are just a few areas where there's a slight reddish sheen to the metal or some little rust spots, and I think it makes a lot of sense to nip it in the butt before it gets any worse. I picked up a couple of products from the local chandleries. I'm familiar with this brand from Denmark. This gel I've never seen before, but we have some little tight spots where there's rust, and I figured a gel might be good to get in there. Another place where I think that gel might be useful is here at the helm, where we've got some welds that are a little bit textured, so they're kind of difficult to get into and polish. According to the instructions, we just dab this stuff on there and leave it for 7 to 12 minutes. The other product is a lot more fun to use in my opinion because the result is instant. Now the supports for our solar panels up here are the most crusty, rusty stuff we've got because they were never polished and they were never passivated. A little dab and then it is just a matter of rubbing. After just a couple of minutes of rubbing, this looks a heck of a lot better. Now the next time we're somewhere for a month or a couple of months, I'll take the solar panels down and get these polished up so that we don't have to do this as often. But for now, this looks perfect. It's been about 10 minutes and this gel stuff doesn't really seem to do much of anything. It didn't even get rid of this very light bit of rust here, so yeah. Oh Glorious polishing pretty much falls into the same category as Oh Glorious sanding. It is a mind-numbingly boring task that is well suited for tuning out and just thinking about other stuff. I really like jobs like these where you just kind of drift off while you're doing it, and then all of a suddenly you realize it's 2 hours later. After copious amounts of stainless steel rubbing, I am delighted to say that all the little rust spots are now gone. And it turns out this gel does actually work. I don't know if I didn't leave it long enough the first time or if I just hadn't stirred the gel yet or whatever, but after that first attempt it did work. I only used this a few places. For almost everything I used the rubbing stuff, but what turned out to be really cool about this is that it worked for removing little rust spots on the paint. Over here by our engine controls there were some tiny rust spots down there from maybe angle grinder dust or something, but there were some little rust spots and that gel got rid of all of it. While we were in the midst of polishing, a local sailmaker swung by and together we inspected the light wind sail, which turned out to be an asymmetrical spinnaker. The sail itself is perfectly serviceable. We just need to figure out a way of attaching the tack of the sail to the boat, and there's room for some improvements in the sock. In terms of attaching the tack of the sail to the boat, I think there's two ways we can go. We can either go with a tack belt, which wraps around the headstay, or we can go with a bowsprit. I think we have everything we need here aboard Athena to cobble together a tack belt, so we might give that a go next week when we bust out the sailrite. The sock, which is the blue thing you see here, which is containing the sail, is a little bit worn. There's some rust spots, a little bit of chafe and a repair up here, but that's not really all that important. What would be nice to do is to improve on this situation here a little bit. I think the way the previous owner used this is this shackle here attached to the spinnaker halyard, and then all of that was hoisted. But that means the entire load of the sail is going to be on this piece of webbing here, which looks a little bit worn, not too bad. Well, this block is broken, but also there is this tiny shackle here, which that would be bearing the entire load of the sail, which, yeah, that looks a little bit light duty. I think I can pretty easily beef up this setup a little bit, but we'll save that for next week when we have the sewing machine out. So as of right now, we can go ahead and close the polish all stainless task, but we will have to add two new tasks to do. That is bowsprit or tack belt and sock improvement. As my last deed of the day, I mounted a fishing pole holder doohickey to the grill support. After a bit of trial and error, I found what I think might be a good solution, but I have never fished from a sailboat before, so we'll see. I am really excited to see what we'll catch crossing the Atlantic. The next morning, I decided to get the engine compartment cleaning task out of the way. Back in France, we picked up this bottle of bilge cleaner. If this color doesn't scream effective cleaner, I don't know what does. After a little bit of spraying all around the engine compartment and a little bit of scrubbing, I hooked up the water hose and rinsed everything off. Another one of the smaller jobs on the to-do list was to replace the active carbon filter underneath the sink. This is the only place on the boat where we bother filtering our water. Recently, the water started tasting a little bit like chlorine, and that is a good sign it's time to replace the filter. There was no dirt or anything else in the filter housing, so I just popped in a new filter. Now, I believe you are supposed to rinse the filters before you use them. I always forget to do that, but yeah, it hasn't killed us yet. With the new filter in place, the taste of chlorine was gone. Job done. With those three small jobs out of the way, we can go ahead and close the rod holder and storage of fishing pole. We can also close the clean engine compartment, and last but not least, the replace water filter. Last night, our new telescoping whisker pole from Selden showed up. It was a pleasant surprise that it was about the same price here in the Canaries as back in Europe. I think we paid 1,064 euros for the whisker pole. Now there's just the small matter of getting the pole out of this thing. This is so much nicer looking than our old crusty pole. I think next week I'll try and swap out the pole on the mast for the new spiffy Selden one, just so we're absolutely sure the new pole doesn't go overboard. Now we'll keep the old 4-meter fixed pole as a backup for now, and yeah, we're all set in the pole department. Speaking of the pole on the mast, the last time we played around with this, I actually got bumped on the head because the pole fell down because of two very, very old clam cleats. That's this guy up here and the guy down here. They're used to grab onto this line here, which is attached to the car that attaches the pole to the mast. Fortunately, the local boat accessories pusher had some suitable replacements that have the same hole spacing as the old ones. There's only one potential little challenge, and that's the fact that the heads on the rivets here look like 6mm rivets to me, and the riveting tool I've got only goes up to 5mm. But yeah, let's get the old ones off and see what's in there. Just as I had feared, these are 6mm holes, so I need a new riveting tool. It never fails to amaze me how a seemingly simple task on a boat can turn into a multi-day frustrating marathon. It is 2 days later now. Turns out our neighbor boat had a rivet thingy that can do 6mm rivets, but when I went to the chantry to pick up the new clam cleats, they only had one of this style. That's the old style. And then for the second one, I had to go with one of these, which is now proving challenging. With the old style of clam cleat, I can get the riveting tool here all the way down and make contact with the flange or head of the rivet there. So that's perfect. But on this new style, there is no way this tip is going in there. It's just too narrow. Maybe if I could find a little piece of thick-walled pipe and slide that down over the rivet, that could take up the space between the head on the rivet and the tool. But even if I do that, I'm not entirely sure the tool will have enough to bite onto. Anywho, I can still go ahead and get the first of the clam cleats on the mast. So far, so good. At least that's kind of half our problem solved. Of course, I have no idea how I'm going to solve the second half, but all the chantries are closed today and tomorrow, so this conundrum will have to wait until next week. As soon as the chantry is open again, I will go there to see if they've got a solution for the rivet conundrum, or maybe there's a clutch we can use instead, or some other alternative solution. I think we have everything we need to make the tack belt. This week I was able to find some really nice nylon webbing and also some stainless rings. But I do still need a tack line, a sheet, and also a block for the tack line. So that's also on the list for the chandlery. The next couple of days, there's going to be a little bit too much wind to test our downwind setup. I mean, the setup should be able to handle plenty of wind, but it's just when it's the first time putting it up, it would be nice if we had just a little bit less wind. This week, I spent quite a bit of time searching for the various doohickeys we need to close the last tasks. Like for instance, I found the two cleats I thought we needed for the cleats for head sail sheets on the cockpit combing, but then it turns out I would actually like a couple more cleats, so I found two, and then yeah, hopefully the chantry has another two in stock. Having just checked the weather, it looks like Wednesday morning could potentially be a good day for our test sail. I think it makes a lot of sense to head out and test both of the sails, the spinnaker and our two pulled out head sails at the same time. So yeah, fingers crossed we'll be ready for Wednesday morning. And on that hopeful note, we hope to see all of you guys back here aboard Athena next week for hopefully a test sail.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm excited to test it out.
Yeah, I'm very excited too.
Woo-hoo.
But yeah, as always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video,
Please remember to leave a like.
see you!